Hey everyone, Steve here from SJ Woodworks. Today we're going to make a black locust bowl. Black locust is a wood that grows pretty commonly here in the Pacific Northwest. And I have this sample of wood here, and what I like about black locust is it has really characteristic bark. I mean, it's just got this really thick bark with a lot of figure. I mean, just a lot of character to it. So I think we're going to go for a natural edge bowl to preserve this bark. I've never made a natural edge bowl before, and just to make it a little more exciting, I'm going to use a 1/2-inch bowl gouge this time instead of using my carbide tools like I usually do. Just so you guys can see that I do know how to use high-speed steel tools. I'll probably still use my carbide tools for things like shaping the tenon on the bowl, things like that for the chuck. But for the most part, we're going to use this bowl gouge to make this natural edge bowl from black locust. So let's see how it turns out.
Okay, I'm just using the bowl gouge here to round out the blank. I put it on the bandsaw and I did cut off the corners. Of course, I still haven't made a circle cutting jig for my bandsaw, so this would be much better if I really would just make that jig, cut this into a circle, and mount it that way. But we went through the process of rounding it out. Now we're going to start shaping the profile of the bowl. I'm not sure what shape I'm going for yet, so just playing around a little bit, rounding it off to see how it goes, knowing that I'm still going to need to cut a tenon on the back and things like that. But I'm getting a feel for how the wood feels. This is a very dry, old piece of locust. It's been cut for at least 5 or 6 years. But kind of getting a feel for how well the bark is holding and things like that as I just kind of cut around the corners here with my bowl gouge. Sort of a scraping action that then turns into a cut along the bevel as we go around the side. Now I want to pause here and sort of point out a mistake I'm about to make. You can see I'm about to start cutting a tenon on the back, but what I haven't thought of yet is that I did not balance this bowl yet. On a natural edge bowl, you've got to balance the top of the bowl so that you don't have one side up higher than the other. You don't have a flat top, you know, it's natural, so if you haven't got it completely flat on there right now, then it's not going to come out flat. All I have now is the spur drive in a little hole on the other side that I drilled in with a Forstner bit through the bark. So when I cut this tenon, watch the mistake that's going to happen here. And I make myself a perfect tenon. I'm going to round out the bottom of the bowl, and then I will find that all of my work here was sort of wasted. But let's go through it anyway, because this is what I did, and you can avoid the mistake I made. So rounding out the bottom of the bowl, getting the profile I like again. Here I've decided that the bark, some of it's not looking like it's going to hold on, so I'm just going to kind of reinforce it a little bit with some CA glue, just hoping that the bark will stick on. I really want to hang on to this bark because it really does provide a lot of character. Now I remember I've got to balance the bowl, but look, it's not quite balanced, so I need to move the whole thing in the bottom. Remember, the top is just on a spur drive into the wood. I've drilled a little hole through the bark so the spur drive hits the wood. Now I've moved the tailstock a little bit. Well, now the whole thing's out of balance, including the tenon. So first I think, well, I just need to, you know, true up the outside with the curve that I want again. Then I realize that that tenon is going to have to be recut because it's now out of round. So after I get the outside profile shaped again, I'll get out my carbide tool again to square up that tenon. Now it's squared up, and now it's too small. So what I've learned here is that now my bowl is going to be 1/4, maybe 3/8 of an inch shorter than it was before. I've got to cut a new tenon. So here I am making a new tenon, making my bowl shorter. I'm going to have to get rid of that old tenon so that the whole thing will still fit in the chuck. So this means now cutting the profile of my bowl again, and now it's a little bit of a shorter bowl. So remember, balance your natural edge bowl before you cut a tenon and avoid this mistake. A little shear scraping to get a better finish on the outside, and checking that the bark is holding there. Now I've got to get rid of the old tenon. I'm going to use my carbide detail gouge here, or scraper, so that I can get rid of that thing, but I'm going to have to break it off and still bring the tailstock up again because I need a mark on the bottom of my bowl to reline it up later when I go to clean up the foot after I've hollowed out the inside. Well, now I've put it in there, and of course now it's not quite true again. So now I'm going to true up the tenon one more time, true up the outside one more time, and finally get to sanding. So I've wasted a fair amount of time here, but now we're finally sanding the outside of the bowl. I can only sand the bottom here while it's on the lathe. Once you get up to the wings or to the side where the bark starts to hit and things change shape, you can't really hand sand it on the lathe like this. So I'm gonna get out the drill and do some power sanding here. I'm just going up to 320, kind of a rustic feel, but 320 is a pretty good finish anyway. You can see the hole there that I had drilled to hold the spur drive, but now we're hollowing it out. When you're hollowing a natural edge bowl, you have to be careful because the bark is very soft and you don't want to knock any of it off. So take your cuts very carefully at the beginning, and then you're going to feel as soon as you get through the bark, you hit the wood, it becomes much harder and it takes a little bit more effort. But what you don't want to do is accidentally get a catch there and slip and knock off a big chunk of your bark that you've been working so hard to keep on there. I'm going to keep the edge of this bowl thicker than you normally would for a bowl this size. This is about 6-inch diameter, but I really want the bark to show, so it's going to be kind of a heavier bowl because I want to show off that bark. We'll sand down the inside, same problem as the outside. You can really only sand deep down on the bottom while it's spinning on the lathe, because those wings you don't want to touch and round it off. So I'll carefully sand those the sides of the bowl with the drill. Now what I've done here, just to clean up the foot, I just have a piece of a 2x4 that I rounded off there. I'm pressing the bowl onto it with a piece of shelf liner to keep from marring the finish on the inside, and putting my tailstock back in that same hole that I had to put on the tenon. I'm using the detailed Easy Wood tool here and making my cuts move in the direction of the headstock. The reason is that I don't want to push to the side too much because I'll knock it out of alignment. I want most of my cuts to put pressure towards the headstock and not sideways on the bowl. And I want to make sure I undercut this a little bit so it will sit flat. I do want just a small foot left on the bottom of the bowl, but I'm undercutting it a little bit, and I'll sand it down here to be smooth like the rest of the bowl, but I want it to sit flat on the edge of that foot, so it's slightly concave there. And I'll get this down pretty small, but I don't want it to break off, otherwise the bowl will fall off. I want to be able to stop and break this off with my hand, and now I'll sand off the rest of that a little bit with the Dremel and then by hand.
Okay, so here's our little bowl. It's about a 6-inch bowl, natural edge like we talked about, and I just put a coat of walnut oil on it for a finish, just to bring out the color of the bark and all the colors here on the side, and I'll get a couple good pictures up for you at the end. You saw, maybe a mistake or two that I made along the way that I do different that I think I explained in the voiceover. But yeah, I think I really like this. This is my first natural edge bowl, like I said, and I really like it. I've never made one before, and I thought, I kind of like traditional flat bowls like normal, but this one came out great. I like it a lot. It's a little bit fragile. The bark is, it's stuck on there, but it's not as strong as the wood, obviously, so it can be broken off pretty easily. But here we go, natural edge bowl in black locust. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel. Feel free to share it with your friends or share it on Facebook or anything else, and I appreciate everybody's subscriptions. We're going to be coming up on 1,000 subscriptions hopefully by the end of the year. That's my goal, so let's see how we do. Thanks a lot. We'll see you guys next time.